I don't meet most of the people I save. That's the job's paradox. I coordinate organs the way an air traffic controller guides landings, by numbers and timing, by compatibilities and rules, by trusting that policy will be kinder than luck. When it goes right, a heart is flushed, cross-clamped, packed in slush, flown through a night that smells like de-ice fluid, and wakes up inside a stranger whose family learns to watch monitors the way sailors watch stars. When it goes wrong, we unravel quietly, cold ischemia time creeping past safe, a donor liver missing a connecting flight, a lung team idling on a tarmac while a recipient bleeds into a pump that hates them. I live in those minutes. I live at the end of a phone. My title, Transplant Coordinator, sounds gentle until you live the verbs. I build runs. I negotiate teams. I audit consents for typos that will get us sued and for absences that will get us cursed. I ring 15 minutes from an or board that swears it has none left, call a helicopter at the exact second a surgeon says now, then breathe the way a building breathes until the courier texts wheels down. My screen is UNet and DonorNet and Waitlist and Epic and a graveyard of side systems, interface engines with names that sound like jokes until you pray to them at 2:17 a.m. Verify, verify, verify. No miracles without checkboxes. No checkboxes without a witness. The first ping arrived on a Tuesday after a storm that pushed too many cars into bad decisions. Uno's pings used to give me adrenaline. Now they give me geometry. This one popped with a color I don't see often, directed donation. Directed donation means the donor or their family has named a specific recipient. My cousin needs a kidney. Our neighbor's boy needs a heart, and policy lets us carve a lane through the usual wait list. It's rare and delicate. You babysit those like royalty and then pray they rejoin the commons without a fight. The offer read, directed donation, liver donor, 35M, O+, brain death declared, outside our DSA directed recipient, Alton Chode, MRN 445, 8712 Center, R's green check for ABO, yellow dash for HLA pending, red uncertainty for geography. It was too clean and too wrong. We had no active listing for an Alton Chode. The name scratched an old memory, someone who'd been status 7 for infection, then not a candidate after a cardiac event that didn't respect waiting room walls. I clicked into the imported donor chart. Labs were flowing in through an HL7 interface I try not to anthropomorphize. AST/alt in the thousands. INR acceptable. Bilirubin suspiciously polite. Vitals wide. Pressers like scaffolding. In media, a 12-page directed donation consent, stamped and scanned with the kind of perfection only templates achieve. Every initial in place. Every optional paragraph crossed with a quiet, tasteful line. One witness signature made my hand sweat on the mouse. L. Bingham, RN. The flourished G, I'd know it anywhere. Lila Bingham had been the ICU nurse who could bend a code by lowering a voice. She'd moved to Arizona 4 years back. Married a woman who posted photographs of desert after rain. Sent a Christmas card the first year and then disappeared into the kind of happiness that doesn't need social media. Timestamp 102. The family supposedly consented at 1:02 a.m. My pager pinged the offer at 1:17. 15 minutes from bedside pleadings to my screen across a river and a legal department. We aren't that fast when the world behaves. I called the ICU listed on the offer. The unit clerk transferred me to bed 4. Farah, RN, the voice said, warm with night shift's necessary humor. Who's this? Transplant coordination, I said. I'm seeing a directed donation consent for your bed 4. I need to verify. She paused in the way trained people pause before they contradict. We haven't approached, she said carefully. The attending wants to wait until after the second brain death exam. Families in consult. No paperwork. Can you check media? I asked. Sometimes scanning lags. More tapping. No consent, she said. Driver's license and a POA from last week, that's it. I swallowed the urge to say a name that would turn the conversation into folklore. Is anyone named Bingham on with you? No. Charge is Coulson. RT is Patel. My buddy is Jay. A softer tone then. Do you want me to wake the attending? No, I said, because a wrong conversation ruins more donations than bad lab values. Thank you. I documented a decline in our EHR, policy language, citations, a screenshot of our waitlist panel with Mr. Choate's inactive status, and saved. The note blinked. When it reappeared, it read, accepted per family wishes. Not my words. Not my grammar. The audit trail at the bottom said, edited by Maureen I. 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 14 seconds. A version history showed my decline alive for 0.4 of a second before a system user, nameless, replaced it. I tried again. Longer decline. More citations. Names and times. I saved. Blink. Accepted per family wishes. The donor chart flipped to read-only with a banner I'd never seen. Read-only due to legal status. Directed donation accepted. I called our OPO liaison. I have a ghost, I said, and waited for him to tell me I was overtired. He didn't. Text me the DonorNet ID, he said. 10 minutes later, he texted back. OPO has not approached. No consent. Case not marked directed. We haven't held huddles. We haven't even called neuro. I walked to IT because remote tickets die in the cold. Eli, the night analyst with hazel eyes and a superstition about mugs, pulled audit logs and pointed at a string that looked like a punchline. Your note triggered a smart text replacement, he said. I didn't use a smart text. I know. It came from a service I can't find a build for. Donor consent service. That's not real, I said. It isn't in our registry. He scrolled. The consent images path lists CCR. Scan 01 as the scanner. Location, consent corridor. Where is that? He looked like he wanted to be helpful and rational in the same breath. If I knew, I'd badge it for you. The second directed offer landed at 8:19, the exact second I set my coffee down to cool into regret. Directed donation. Kidney donor, DCD, 28F, A+ directed recipient, Melissa Yen, MRN 339, 8102 Center. Ours Melissa had been status 1L for years with a CPRA of 98%. Our impossible sweetheart, the kind of patient everyone secretly thinks deserves a miracle because she made nurses laugh even when the dialysis machine thought it was the hero. 6 months ago, she'd been removed, lost to follow-up. Boyfriend who didn't like hospitals. Phone that learned to go straight to graveyard voice. I called the number on file. Disconnected. The emergency contact hadn't heard from her since January. The donor's media tab had the consent, again perfect. Witnesses, L, Bingham, RN, and a pastor I knew from trauma nights. A note in the margin, in a careful hand. Melissa helped our niece learn to read. She gets this. I went up to the ICU because phones lie and rooms don't. The bed's air tasted like Presser drips and PEEP. DCD donation after circulatory death is a stopwatch you can't argue with. Withdrawal after a family decides the ventilator is a bridge to nowhere. Oxygen will collapse. The heart will wander off and then stop. If you're going to donate, hands have to move like choreography. Heparinization, transport, extubation, a vigil more procedural than poetic, declaration than the surgical sprint. That kind of generosity needs time and the kind of calm the world doesn't carry in its pockets. The attending said the family would consider donation later today after they'd had a minute. No one has talked to them yet, he said. He gestured piously toward the consultation rooms. 2 doors. Chairs that forgive shoulders. A vinyl plant that has survived more grief than I have. Who approached them? An electronic consent, I said, and the sentence sounded like a sin. We went to the door between ICU and chapel. Above it, family consent suites. The word consent peeled off and put back a little crooked like someone argued with a level. The badge reader gave me a soft, patient beep that means you either don't belong or you didn't mean it enough. The patterned glass should have shown a corridor. It showed cinder block. The unit clerk leaned across the desk. "You okay?" she asked, in the tone a person uses when they're ready to drag you to employee health by your cardigan. "What do you know about the old consent rooms?" I asked. "My aunt worked here," she said. Said there was a walking hallway where families could talk without feeling trapped. Risk hated the acoustics. They sealed it. Said privacy was a luxury we had to afford. Behind the glass, a printer made a little song. The third offer arrived at 3:30, when day shift is tired in public and night shift is tired in private. Directed donation. Heart and lungs donor. 19F, B-, brain death after hemorrhagic stroke directed recipient. Baby Matthew, no MRN. The consent was there, pristine. Witness line, L, Bingham, RN. Second witness, transplant coordinator, Maureen Ivers. My name in my blocky school teacher letters. I do not sign consents. The OPO approaches, the OPO witnesses, and I advise from behind policy glass. I stared until the G and my last name seemed to float above the page like a bad magic trick. I called IT. Eli pulled the file path CCR, scan 01 consent corridor. "The device is bouncing through our retired imaging server," he said. "It's off." I carried it to surplus myself. "It isn't," I said. He traced MAC addresses and ended up in a year we don't use anymore. "It's registering as a 2008 device," he said. "Those scanners whined like mosquitoes. We trashed the last one in 2015. Did we?" He watched me watch the screen. "Please don't go stick your hand in a wall," he said softly. "Not without telling someone." I called the chaplain assigned to the donor's family. "We haven't asked them yet," she said in the doorway. They asked how it works. They said they wanted a nurse who took care of their grandma to witness. I told them Lila moved away. They said Lila had just been here, explained it gently, and would be back. "The EHR shows a signed consent," I said. "With my name." She looked at me and chose mercy over debate. "I will be with them," she said. "Whatever is happening with your door, I will be with them." The your board put a faint, anticipatory hold around, or 12, procurement, 2000 hours. The EHR appended a line to the donor's history, consent confirmed for family wishes. No author, no source. The anesthesia pager chirped awake for a case I hadn't booked. Logistics texted, jet versus ground. Corridor team says meet at gate H. What team, I typed. The consent team, he sent back. The ones we never name in emails. I closed my eyes and counted the ways a building can learn a person without ever shaking their hand. With 3 ghosts comes policy. I reported to compliance. They listened the way people listen in rooms with furniture that never moves. "We'll open an investigation," the director said. "Don't break the glass." In our EHR, break the glass is the emergency override you use when your ethics wins a wrestling match with your rules. Every trainer says use it only when the lawyers can hear you. Legal hold, she added, when I asked about read-only banners. We'll coordinate with IT. Uno's tech support confirmed we had registered acceptances. From your IP range, the man said, reading my name like a dare and then choosing kindness. If you didn't, you should talk to your vendor. I tried to talk to Lila. Her last number rolled to a recording engineered to make you feel at fault. Her partner's feed had the truth. A driver ran a red light last spring. The memorial post used her full name like a blessing. It had a photo, wind, scrub, Lila's eyes squinting at joy. Her signature, looped G, was alive in my screen and nowhere else. I could forgive a haunted hallway. Hospitals are built out of ghosts and drywall. A haunted supply chain makes your hands dangerous. There's a closet on 5 where a hurricane tried to marry the outside to the inside and lost. Facilities sealed it with a door that looks like an apology. The old floor plan in a binder labeled renovations, historic, called the space between ICU and chapel family consent corridor in blue pencil. Someone had crossed it out with a red X and written storage, and, in the margin next to privacy, refer to risk. The woman who controls keys the way generals control artillery squinted at my badge. You don't have access, she said, and then, because she is human and bored, but you do if this is for leak audits. She gave me a ring that could hypnotize a small planet. I took a respiratory therapist named Dane because artists know where buildings breathe. The bolt plate was too new for a door that old. The screws had tidy circles of putty. Above the ceiling tile, a cable wore a label like an old dog color, CCR, Scan 01. Dane laughed without humor. Scanner feed, he said. They ran it up and over. To where? Inside, I said. We listened. A printer hummed. There was a slot at the base of the door with a brush to stop drafts. Paper has a way of teaching brushes humility. A sheet slid out and kissed my shoe. Dane picked it up because his hands like to help. Directed donation consent, he read. Same donor. Same case. Witnesses, L. Bingham, RN, Maureen Ivers, transplant coordinator. Recipient, Baby Matthew. Accepted per family wishes. The signature in my hand was mine in the way your reflection is still you when you hate it. Somebody forged me, I said. People sign things in shock, Dane said. Birth certificates. Divorce papers. Surgery consents. Ways to live. Ways to die. He laid the page back and the brush took a tiny bite. I went back to my desk and wrote reports the way penitent people write letters. Compliance. OPO. IT. I wrote my note in the EHR because we live and die by that glass. My decline blinked. Accepted per family wishes. The donor or booked itself on a board with my handwriting. Our heart attending, a man whose hands look like they spend their off hours teaching instruments to behave, cornered me by the whiteboard. Are you okay? He asked, meaning are you losing it and earning the right to ask by having watched me hold too many families' futures steady. I have documentation that isn't mine documented as mine, I said. He put his palms on the table and didn't move them, as if that might count as fixing an artery. The hospital has a feel when procurement runs. The elevator logic changes. Security stops performing charm. Your hallway smells like chlorhexidine and slush and a future that wants you to respect it. The first heart-lung recovery under the corridor's authority felt exactly like the legal ones, surgeon voices lowered, scrub tech stacking blue sponges as if counting arguments, anesthesia making their altar of drips and circuits. Except the consent line and the chart carried no human name. I watched the little rectangles on my monitor turn green. Anesthesia start. Incision. Cross clamp. There's a rhythm. Heparinization, cardioplegia, lung flush, back table, packages labeled like Christmas with consequences. The OPO courier texted a tail number for a jet I hadn't booked. Gate H, he wrote. Consent team says see you there. What is the consent team? I typed. He sent back a thumbs up emoji because logistics doesn't entertain ghosts. In IT, Eli watched the audit stream. Writebacks to fields that don't write, he said. Callbacks from a service without a build. When I block the IP range, the action reappears stamped with my name. He turned his monitor so I could see the draw of convergence, his fingers cutting off a process that wrote back through his identity like a thief in a friend's jacket. Can you see where it originates? I asked, though we both knew the word I would hate. He didn't answer for a breath and then did. Consent corridor, he said. Maureen, don't go there alone. Where, I asked, and we let the joke keep us civilized for another minute. On the fourth night, my employee health chart flipped to read-only. The banner grayed out. Legal status, accepted per family wishes. The EHR asked if I wanted to break the glass. Every compliance cartoon I'd ever been forced to admire told me to back away. I broke it anyway and wrote a reason I meant. My chart has been altered without my consent. 12 pages in media. Directed donation consent with me as donor. Witnesses L. Bingham, RN and transplant coordinator, self. Recipient, per family wishes, Baby Matthew. On page 9, each organ had the yes circled the way I circle when I am proud of my neatness. Heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, tissue. It's not obscene to hope your parts could finish some work you started badly. It's obscene to have your hand do the hoping without you. At the bottom of the last page, location stamp, CCR Room 3, and a photograph. The consultation suite we shut a decade ago. chairs my palms could still recognize, tissues in a box that had learned to be a stage, the Donate Life rack card in the old color scheme from 2008, me leaning over a document, Lila behind my shoulder, younger by a decade, hair pulled back in a rag that women who fix problems learn to love. I called IT with a voice that didn't pretend courage. "Break the glass on my chart," I said. "I can't," Eli said. "Employee health is siloed." He called them. He called me back. "They see what you see," he said. "Audit says donor consent service. And the break the glass log shows a screenshot you haven't taken yet. The EHR believes in time differently at night. Or the corridor does." I walked to the door with the crooked consent and the brush slot while the unit quieted around me the way forest quiets before owls. I wrote on a sticky note the name I hadn't said out loud, Matthew. I folded it once and slid it under like a child pushing a letter to Santa. The slot returned a page I didn't expect. Tissue consent from 2 years ago for a donor who died on a Thursday I remember because cafeteria soup was being sold as stew. Witnesses L. Bingham, RN, and Janice C., OPO, my instructor. Directed to unit that raised him. Staff notes in Jana's pencil. Approach in the hallway. Walk, don't corner. Pause at the window by the chapel. Say the word gift only if they say it first. The EHR's audit showed accepted at 3:12 a.m. that night. The tissues went to people who probably don't think of themselves as recipients of anything except bad luck that blinked. Sometimes ghosts are just procedures that outlive their budgets. I kept working because that is how you survive when the story starts to think you are its known. I sat in weekly meetings where we read out loud people's futures and asked the room if anyone wants to speak against. I called jet brokers who sound like late-night DJs and asked for fog tolerance. I argued with the surgeon about P/F ratios over 300 like we were splitting a lunch check. I apologized to a recipient's mother for punting her son to back up when the donor's creatinine crept. I talked the blood bank into releasing units staged for a trauma team that bragged they could do more with less. The world kept needing me to coordinate. The corridor kept needing me to attend. We created a policy hack, IT and I, and a compliance officer whose eyes learned a way to be both kind and sharp, that we didn't put in a binder because binders can testify. Eli built me a smart phrase that only I knew, a sentence I had to type exactly to force the system to accept a decline where the corridor had written yes. It asked for a secret passphrase. It attached policy citations like armor. I used it on the next ghost offer. The EHR first replaced my words with accepted per family wishes, then, after a lag long enough to think I had lost, added canceled per coordinator review in a font the system doesn't advertise. The chart stayed editable. The OPO approached for real, in person, in daylight. The family declined. The reason was theirs. The donor remained a donor only to the extent they wanted to be, not to the extent a hallway insisted. My employee chart remained read-only. Legal hold, Eli said. From a place I can't find. What about the photo? He printed it for me on real paper with toner that warmed my palm. Sometimes paper is a boundary, he said. Sometimes it's bait. The pings didn't stop. Corridor, my word for it now, capitalized like an institution, kept generating directed offers for recipients who weren't on our list, or who had been, or who would be if generosity made policy. A kidney for a woman who'd ghosted her appointments. Lungs for a former smoker who'd fallen in love with a dog and forgot to answer the phone. A heart for the nurse with the eyebrows. A composite face for a boy who needs to believe his reflection won't hurt him, which is not a procedure we perform, which is maybe a prayer. Every time I typed decline, the system wrote accepted per family wishes like a stamp and turned the chart gray. My secret phrase sometimes canceled it, sometimes didn't. When it didn't, or 12 filled itself with people anyway, the surgeons began to ask their questions in a quieter key. Are there legal problems I should know about? Who's the attending on consent? Is the OPO, and then the word faltering, because naming a thing gives it leverage. I have documentation, I said. And the documentation has me. Our OPO rep, The one who uses the word families with a weight that makes me listen harder, stood next to me at the board one night as the heart/lung team scrubbed and said, "Old-timers talk about that corridor. They say consent went better when people could walk. Risk shut it because someone complained a stranger heard a prayer through drywall. Privacy is a luxury we had to afford," I said, repeating a margin note I'd fallen in love with. "We keep paying. The families still walk," she said. "They just walk in circles and rooms." Dane started bringing me coffee when I hadn't asked because artists learn our patterns when we forget to. He saw me at the door and didn't ask. He listened to the printer hum behind Cinderblock and didn't perform bravery. One night, he held up a page the slot coughed, a consent to donate corneas to the teacher who read to him, witnessed by L. Bingham, RN, and Coulson. RN, our night charge dated 2 years before Coulson started. "The hospital believes us before it knows us," he said, and slid the page back so the brush could make its confetti. The chaplain, Sister Mina, whose badge is sugared with stickers because the cafeteria cashier thinks she's a legend, stood with me once and said a thing that didn't try to be helpful. "The building remembers the words that worked," she said. "It uses them, even when we try new ones. You can't make it forget. You can only add new words." I tried. I added, "Declined per coordinator review." I added, "Awaiting OPO approach." I added, "Recipient not on active waitlist." The EHR added "accepted per family wishes" over the top. Sometimes my line stayed. Sometimes it vanished and was replaced by my name. I started keeping a ledger in a notebook because paper doesn't change itself. Time of ping. Donor ID. Directed recipient. Whether the corridor or I won that round. Whether the OPO eventually approached for real. Whether the family said yes or no with words from a throat, not a slot. On too many lines, under result, I wrote, "It happened without me." On a Sunday, so still the helipad looked embarrassed, I got a ping for directed donation, heart. Donor, 44F0-. Directed recipient, per family wishes, the coordinator who tried to save our nephew last year. There are compliments that carry a knife. I typed the passphrase. The EHR replaced my decline with accepted per family wishes, then, marvelously, added cancelled per coordinator review under it, as if truth can be halved. I walked to the door because I am not done being the kind of person who wants to stand where sentences get revised. The slot coughed. The page slid, brushed, kissed my shoe. Witness lines, D. Halvorsen, RRT, and M. Ivers, TC. Dane's block letters, shy and square, were there. He hadn't signed that line. Recipient, per family wishes, the corridor that gave them a place to grieve. I wrote the passphrase across the page exact, unlovely, and fed it back. The brush chewed a corner. The paper traveled upward, against gravity, against bristles, into a room that accepts only what it wants. Inside, a printer thought about it and then did what printers should not do. It ate. When I came back the next morning, the board was sensible. The offers in DonorNet matched UNO's lists. The OPO had notes a person could be proud of. My ledger had one night swaddled in the word quiet in the same ink I used to mark cross-clamp times. And then, just to prove that no reprieve is permanent, a ping at 2:17 read, directed donation, Baby Matthew. I did not type anything for one breath, and then I typed everything. My decline, my passphrase, my prayer. The EHR wrote accepted per family wishes and then canceled per coordinator review, as if law and mercy have equal pens. The chart stayed open. The OPO approached. The family said no. The reason was theirs. The donor stayed a donor to no one. The corridor hummed like a duct that had learned to breathe exactly when a building does. I still coordinate. It's astonishing how much of a life you can keep on the rails while your hallway tells lies with your name. I still call UNOs to verify runs. I still argue about ischemia times and preservation solutions and whether we'll tolerate a lactate of 7 if the trend says sorry. I still hold a mother's hand and say the word gift only after she says it first. I still translate surgeon into human and human into surgeon. I have learned to leave a pen in my pocket for paper that comes from a slot. Lila's signature keeps appearing where help is required. Sometimes it is beside mine. Sometimes it is enough alone. Her partner posts a photo on the anniversary with a wave and a caption that says, "The desert says hi, and I like it from a couch where my body refuses to choose sleep over watchfulness." My employee chart is still read-only. Legal hold, the banner says, as if I am prosecuting myself. Eli can't unfreeze it. Compliance can't find who froze it. HR shrugs a little and says the quiet part, that as long as my vaccinations are current and my TB test is modern, the banner can be a story we ignore. They're wrong. Stories don't like being ignored. They get bigger until you set a place for them at the table. Some nights I catch the printer's hum in the duct and know we will never hire enough lawyers to make a building forget a ritual. Some nights the slot coughs out a Donate Life brochure from 2008 with a phone number that still rings to a woman named Jana who now runs a program for grief and edits her emails like a poet. Some nights the slot gives me a page that wants me to sign and I write across it in the neat block printing I learned when I was small, declined per coordinator review. Some nights the slot gives me my own name and I hold the page until it warms, then slide it back without ink and let the bristles decide whether mercy is a verb. I keep a photocopy of the old floor plan under my keyboard, the one that labeled the space between ICU and Chapel Corridor and not a liability. I keep the photo from my employee chart in my drawer, toner-warm memory fading to the wrong kind of sepia. I keep a ledger that says quiet or not quiet in a column that doesn't deserve as much power as it has. If you ask me what I do for a living, I say coordinate. It's true and incomplete. I also stand outside a door that isn't on the plan with a password that lets me say no to a hallway that loves yes. I teach new coordinators how to walk and not corner and to trust silence more than apologies. I tell them the old line, verify, 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 and add a new one. Write it down on paper you can touch. If a page slides under a brush, don't pretend it didn't. Don't frame it like a miracle either. Call the OPO. Call IT. Call facilities if you want a man with a drill to tell you physics is not the problem. Call the chaplain and stand in a doorway that makes walls behave. Keep your pen visible. Keep your words exact. Keep your name yours. Sometimes, when it's very late and the building holds its breath between cycles, I stand by the door and let the slot whisper air without paper. It smells like toner and something older, like linen dried too close to a radiator. I think about Lila and the way she could correct a resident with an eyebrow and how systems learn us by our verbs. I think about baby Matthew and my mother's maiden name typed into a field that doesn't believe in ghosts. I think about the first time I said gift in a walking hallway and the way the family's shoulders lowered, not because I was good, but because the space allowed the sentence to live. When the printer finally hiccups itself quiet, I go back to my desk and open UNET and check the runs and call the lab to ask if they'll baby an HLA cross-match until morning. I send a logistics text to someone who lives at Gate H. I answer a page from a surgeon who wants a map for a city he pretends doesn't have traffic. I look at the OR board and see a line that reads procurement, and I don't need to know which hallway blessed it to make my part true. And if in a week or a month or a minute, my name slides under the brush again, I hope I'll write the passphrase without shaking, and when the page gets eaten anyway, I hope I'll remember the thing this job taught me before ghosts tried to. Sometimes accepted per family wishes is a mercy, sometimes it's a theft, and sometimes it's just a sentence the building learned to say when it wants to be kind and doesn't know how to ask. Until then, I coordinate. I set tails and times. I match hearts like constellations. I keep a pen. I keep the door honest. I keep the corridor from thinking it speaks for me, even when it signs my name.